being my authentic self, showing up fully, offering myself fully, receiving love, giving love, receiving love from the Father, receiving love from you and my friends, my family, offering that feels like practicing for heaven. That feels like the abundant life.
Welcome to Permission Slips, a space for you to practice paying attention to your life with self-compassion and kindness, so you can experience the wholeness, purpose, and joy you were made for. I'm Jillian DeBritz, a life and leadership coach and a recovering perfectionist, learning alongside you how to give myself permission to be human. I'm so glad you're here with me today for this conversation with my friend, Rachel Miller. Rachel, thanks for being here, friend.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
I'm so excited just to share you with the people listening and to get to talk about our friendship and how it is formed. I know both of us. It's changed me forever. And I'm just so grateful that you said yes. So I want people to know who you are and a little bit about how we met, because Rachel serves on the Confessional Community Facilitator Support Team with the Center for Being Known, which is an organization whose mission is to create connections and opportunities for the creation of beauty and goodness at the intersection of interpersonal neurobiology and Christian spiritual formation. So we met because of our shared appreciation for the work of Dr. Kurt Thompson and his writing and podcast. And so he's behind the Center for Being Known and has sort of spearheaded this work that we've both now experienced the benefit of. Rachel lives in Pennsylvania with her family. And we've also discovered that we have a shared love for musical theater, namely the Phantom of the Opera. And we may or may not have both pretended to be Christine Daae when we were younger. But the fun fact I just learned about Rachel, this is so fun, is that she currently has 5 toads living with her in her family. Talk about the toads, please, Rachel. Why?
My children love to collect things from the woods, from our hikes, and I guess I have a hard time telling them no when I see such joy.
So hold on. Are you telling me that these toads were collected from the woods? These are wild toads that you have brought into your house?
These are wild toads. Please don't tell on us.
No. I love this about you. I love this. Well, Rachel, there's just so much. I feel like every time we have interacted in our confessional community or even offline here in our conversation before we started, there's just something new and delightful that I discover about you. And so I kind of want people to know both how we met, really what this confessional community thing is, and how you became a part of the Confessional Community Facilitator Support Team. So just context-wise, again, a confessional community is something that I was a part of with Rachel earlier this year. We were a part of it every week for 6 months together. And Rachel was actually the facilitator of our confessional community. So can you talk about what that was, what a confessional community is, and how you became a facilitator? How did you get involved in this?
Sure. Well, I guess the short answer is we're a group of people practicing for heaven, right? So, and then the long answer that was very well thought out and written by some of the folks at CBK is that people in every walk of life are longing to be known. The work of being known is not just a handful of good ideas, nor is it for any one of us to do alone. Rather, it's about joining our Creator in living an abundant life, but one must be lived together with people who are vulnerably practicing loving well. Where the rupture of shame has sought to disintegrate a person or a system, the repair and restoration that our work brings can be realized, transforming what was once broken into beautiful, creative endeavors. We agree that every gathering is that of the body of Christ in the presence, guidance, and power of the Holy Spirit, and that our interactions are embodied acts of prayer. And I could not have said it better than that.
Wow, it's so beautiful, right? This idea of restoration through showing up together as the body of Christ in a way that heals the impact of shame through the community that we formed together. That's so beautiful. So can you kind of summarize so a confessional community is this really intentional group of vulnerable people practicing, telling their stories more truly, practicing for heaven. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Well, in this context, it looks like gathering together on Zoom for 60 minutes a week, 90 minutes a week for 6 months, and just being vulnerable and practicing naming our emotions, naming what we feel in our bodies, and Um, it is terrifying at first. These are strangers. We don't know any of them before we enter that first meeting, right? And we're we're asking people to share the deepest parts of themselves, maybe things that they've never even told close friends and family. And we're building trust and we're building a safe place to share those things, um, and be accepted in them.
Yeah, which it's so interesting. I am someone who values being deeply known. Like vulnerability is one of my highest personal values. I know the healing power of connection that comes through vulnerability. And even as you say that, like I have this voice in the back of my mind that's like, why in the world would anyone do that? Why would anyone meet with strangers on the internet and just share their stuff? Like what in the world? But truly though, what drew you to a confessional
Mm,
community, and what was that experience like for you?
yeah. Okay. So we're gonna, I know you value going deep, so we're gonna go deep.
I
I
love
did,
it.
yeah. Well, right around the time I turned 30, I found myself in a place where I kept saying, okay, Jesus says that there's abundant life. Like he came for us to have abundant life. Where is it? What's going on? There's a huge disconnect here. Where is it? So I guess that prompted me to go and run hard after it. And I was doing all the things that I thought would lead to abundant life. I was serving in church ministries and doing all of the Christian things, all
Mhm.
the practices, which are beautiful, but they aren't the life. He's the life. And so I guess confessional communities are just another practice, but it was a practice with the embodied Holy Spirit, in other people. It was practicing in real time, essentially with Him.
Mhm. Yeah, well, and I hear you saying that there is this external behavior that you were doing the things, which I so relate to that. I so relate to that sense of like, I'm doing the things I'm supposed to do, but my insides still feel like there's something missing. My insides still feel like Jesus hasn't really touched them or touched them enough, or that like I'm almost trying to contain what's inside of me so it doesn't mess up what's outside, like how I'm showing up in the world. Like, can I work harder just to contain the brokenness and the ugly and the insecurity and what a lot of people call sin, which there is that kind of brokenness that comes in that's just like me thinking about myself more than anyone else. But there's also this place where I'm so aware of my wounds that are have been unattended to, that I often blame myself for, like, oh, if I'm hurting or I'm insecure, it's probably because I didn't work hard enough or I did something wrong. But what I hear you saying is like, no, that there's more that you wanted that would make space for those internal, heart, emotional, embodied experiences to be brought into the space where all of you could experience that abundant life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. And I'll say that the practices that I was doing, while good practices, I was becoming angrier and angrier on the inside.
Mm,
And that always comes out sideways onto the people that you love. So I hear you with the containing it so that it doesn't, you
yeah.
know, come
Well, and it
out.
makes me think of what Kurt Thompson, who again I mentioned in the beginning, Dr. Kurt Thompson has had such a profound impact on my healing journey, my spiritual journey, and I know same for you. And most people, actually, I think everyone who joins a confessional community is in some way familiar with his work, writing, podcast, the Being Known podcast, which I'll make sure to put links in the show notes for these. But I remember hearing him say that and it was in actually The Soul of Desire that he talks a lot about these confessional communities. But he talks about how we are created, we are made to create artifacts of goodness and beauty in the world. And the energy it requires to contain the angst, the hurt, the wounds, the buried emotion that we've never given ourselves space to acknowledge or feel, the past experiences that we say are in the past, so let's just leave them there, like it doesn't matter, like move forward. We don't
Mm,
realize how much energy we are burning to contain those things. And so we cannot then use the energy to create the goodness and beauty in the world that we're made for. So I'm curious for you, as you talk about like the harder I worked, the more angry I became. What was underneath that anger? What was going on for you as you were feeling like I'm working hard and yet I'm angry? Can you identify more about what was happening inside you?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it all came down to the fear of there's something wrong with me. the fear that I'm unlovable, I'm not wanted. So those fears manifesting in I've got to prove that that's not true. And I have to work hard to maybe change others' behaviors towards me so that I know it's true. When is that ever enough? When is it
Never,
enough?
never. It's exhausting.
Right, right. And I remember, as you talked about the weight of containing all those things, the burden of containing all of that so that it doesn't explode on the people that I love. And I remember sharing in group that my family had often says, "Mom, you look so angry." And I imagine that I walk around with this scowl on my face all the time. And all of a sudden it dawned on me and when I was receiving from you guys that I do have so much tension on the inside that it was coming out on my face, and that's what my kids were seeing, and I thought, "I don't wanna carry this anymore. I don't wanna
Yeah.
carry this burden. I don't wanna try to contain this and have it come out on my face." I want the
Yeah.
wrinkles that are on the sides of my eyes
Right.
from
The smile
smiling too
lines.
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want the worry
Totally.
lines from scowling.
Yeah. Oh man, such a beautifully honest, I want to say confession. As we talk about
Mm,
confessional communities, we're speaking the truth. We're practicing telling the truth more fully, telling our stories more fully. And your honesty to recognize, man, I'm angry in ways that I didn't even know were coming out on like in ways that people around me are noticing. Like, one, that must have been so devastating for you because I know that's the last way that you want to show up to the people you
mm,
care about. And two, I think about how brave you are that you would notice, okay, there's a disconnect between what I'm feeling inside and how I'm showing up to the people around me and actually who I want to be to them and even
mhm,
who you're made to be able to name that honestly and then say, okay, I'm going to go to a place where I can tell the truth about that. And I'm going to let people see that part of me with the hope that maybe something about being seen, being known will heal and release that tension. That's really brave.
Thanks, Jillian.
Well, and even as you're talking, like this is something that we model, and I want to talk about a little bit about kind of the liturgy, like the structure of a confessional community, because it's something that as I heard about it, I thought that's kind of weird. That's a weird way to structure a group. But walking through it is actually so beautiful, like unexpectedly beautiful. But as you were talking, something I noticed that we do during our group meetings, we name what we're noticing in our own bodies and in our own emotions. And so as you were talking, I was just noticing even this tightness in my chest, like I could feel the tension that of what you were carrying. I could feel that in my body, like just the weight of it and the tightness and that sense of constraint, which, gosh, yeah, is exhausting. That feels exhausting to even listen and hear you name that. Can you talk about that structure, that liturgy, that so like 6 to 8-ish people gather once a week for 90 minutes? What do we do? Like, yeah, we spill our guts. Say more about that sounds awful. Say more about how we make it safe for people.
Yeah. Well, so it's a little different than a Bible study group or group or counseling or a friend group, if you will, and that we do have very strategic guardrails that we aim to follow. And as facilitators, we're full participants as well. So the facilitators are also sharing their stories and receiving
Yeah.
feedback from those
Yeah.
stories.
I'm so glad you said that because I think a lot of people might wonder, like, so is this like a counseling group? Are these therapists? And there are
No.
different groups that can be run by therapists, kind of group therapy modeled in a similar
Yeah.
way. But these specific confessional communities through the Center for Being Known are peer led by people like you or me that are trained and invited to participate with the rest of the group. So I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah, yeah. And if you read Soul of Desire or you listen to season 7 of the Being Known podcast, where Kurt Thompson and Pepper Sweeney talk about the confessional communities, while we're using the same liturgy and the same model, those are run by professionals. And at the Center for Being Known, we're completely peer led. So it is slightly different in that way, but it's also makes it so much more accessible to somebody who's not a therapist or and who would like to just grow in this way and the Holy Spirit says, "Hey, I'd like you to facilitate." Well, there's no qualifications, professionally other than a hunger, to learn more and to grow more and to be curious and to be present with people. So that's
Yeah.
that's encouraging
Yeah.
for
Right.
people who don't have the background, all the
Yeah.
the resume to do that
Totally.
kind of thing professionally.
Right. And I would say
Yeah.
too, as a participant in your group, like there's something really disarming about knowing there's not like a power structure or a hierarchy of like, you're more experienced, you're more trained, you're more qualified to be a part of this work than I am. Like, no, you're in it with me, learning with me, being vulnerable with me. So talk about the structure, talk about that liturgy. Like, what does it look like
Yeah.
as we move through each meeting time?
Yeah. So, well, I don't want to give all the secrets away. You have to come and
Well,
join one. But no.
I think for some people though, like there is an anxiety that comes of not knowing
Yeah.
what to expect.
Right.
And I'm thinking about the
Right.
people who are like, well, yeah, I want more, but that sounds terrifying and horrible and like my worst nightmare to have people know my deepest
Right.
stuff. And so I'm
Right.
wondering if offering some more clarity might diffuse some of that anxiety for people.
No, I hear you. Yeah, absolutely. And I want to just say that confessional communities are not for fixing people.
Mm,
Okay. People aren't to be fixed.
mm,
That's not why we're there. We're there to connect, and we're there to connect with people and with God. So for our meetings, and each group would vary a little bit in how they structure it, and that's a group decision. But we started right with a little check-in, and name two emotions that you're bringing, two things that you're or sensations that you're bringing into the group for this meeting. And so we're not really saying, oh, this has been my week, this is what's going on in my life. It's really just what am I right here right now and feeling, nervous and tingly, and I'm also feeling hopeful and expectant or whatever. And that's really hard for people to name. So we actually offer like feeling wheels and, just aids for people to look at to say, yeah, I'm actually not really sure how I feel in the moment, but I think I'm going to go with distracted, you know?
mhm, mhm,
So it's baby steps into even that part of it. And then for 20 minutes, one person will share a story. And it could be a story that happened last week, or it could be their entire childhood summed up, or it could be, whatever, or a traumatic story, whatever. They have 20 minutes to share whatever they want. And we encourage people not to write it down, to just go with the Holy Spirit and what he leads you to say. And then after that, we take turns going around the group, and each person shares what emotion or sensation was evoked in them during that story. We're not fixing, we're not giving opinions, we're not trying to relate it to our lives even and say, oh yeah, one time I, you know, just wow, when you said XYZ, I felt sick to my stomach or I felt elated for you. And that helps us to become more aware of what's going on in our bodies and to practice being present to our own bodies and to practice being present with each person. So we essentially just kind of go back and forth and do that for the remainder of the time. And it's incredible what happens. It
yeah.
is incredible what happens.
It's so interesting because as you're talking about the liturgy of the storyteller, having people hear how their story is impacting them emotionally and in their bodies, and then back and forth, the storyteller reflecting what it's like to have people be impacted by their story. On the outside, on paper, you're like, okay, well, what does that do? Like, what is the point of that? But
Yeah.
for you and I, who have been in the seat, where, for me, something that I really struggle with is taking up space in a room. I worry that I'm too much. I worry that I have too many words. I worry that people aren't interested in what I have to say, which is ironic as I, host a podcast. This is something I'm wrestling with in real time. Um, But there's something deeply healing about having 20 uninterrupted minutes with people who care about me, who are not leaving the room, virtual room or a real room, fixed fully attention on me and my story. I have a friend who has said something that sticks with me, and I can't stop thinking about this idea that attention is the most lavish form of love. It is
Mhm.
lavish and extravagant to feel the love of others through their uninterrupted attention. And so something about that allows me to receive in an embodied way, not just like, I know they love me, I know they care about me. Okay, move on, next person. There's something that like, and I know neurobiologically it shifts, right? But I can feel it like, oh, I'm loved moving from my head. Like you can see on the screen, I'm like showing my hands dripping down all the way into my heart and in my body. And it's something that has to be practiced again and again and again. We can't just know it once. We can't just experience once, oh, I'm loved. But we need to hear it and feel it and receive it again and again and again. And that's what I love about this model is that every week, I mean, we're taking turns telling our stories, but every week we're a part of it. Even if I'm reflecting on someone else's story, I'm a part of giving and receiving love in an embodied way. And that
Yeah.
changes me. It's changed me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
How's it
I was gonna
changed
say the
you?
exact same
Mhm.
thing. I was gonna say
Yeah.
the same thing that when it doesn't matter if you're the storyteller, you're getting to participate in this beautiful process, even if you're just there naming the things that you are experiencing through that story. And yeah, to speak a little bit to my experience, I just remember being floored, shocked that my presence was enough. That all I was doing was offering what I was feeling in the moment, how I was being affected, and that affected you, Jillian. That blew my mind that all I had to do was show up and that I was enough, that my presence was what was wanted.
You and I have a high value around emotional literacy, like paying attention to naming our emotions. We understand inherently because of the reading and work we've done, and whether it's individual counseling for me or marriage counseling or reading Kurt Thompson and others work, like we understand inherently that paying attention to our emotions is important and healing. Not everyone has that kind of base understanding or would even agree with that, but there is something about telling my story. Like I'm used to my story. Like I know different parts of my experience and I have a way that I think about it and a way that I've made sense of it. But there's something about telling a story that maybe I've told 1,000 times to myself or to my family or whatever, whether it's something that happened in childhood or something that, like you said, that happened last week. As I tell it to someone else and hear their responses to me, there is a new level of awareness that unlocks
Mm,
freedom and helps me see things that I could not see on my own. I cannot see myself clearly on my own.
yeah.
And I feel like that has been the most healing thing is to have this group of people who I respect dearly because I've heard all of your insides. And I've heard you try to make sense of it. And I've heard you responding to other people over time. And so I know you're trustworthy. And hearing everyone in the room, again, over Zoom virtually, telling me what they see in me, I believe you.
Hmm.
I believe you. I believe what you say about me, even if I can't see it in myself. And that has been also transformational. I want to hear more about what it's changed for you.
Yeah, no, I'm shaking my head. You can't see me, but I'm shaking my head. Yes, yes, yes. Because I remember the first time you called me brave, and I thought, well, of course, I watched all the Disney movies as a child, wanted to be the brave princess, but that's not
Right.
a word that I would use for myself. And when you heard me talk about my story and the choices that I said, I made those choices. I made those choices, I chose that. And you called me brave. I thought, okay, I have some choices here. I can either say, oh, that's nice. Thanks a lot. Or I could choose because I chose to be vulnerable and tell you all of my insides and not leave anything out. You knew all the yucky parts and the choices I made, and you still chose to call me brave. I could choose to believe what you see in me. I could borrow that view of myself, right? And I have. I've borrowed that. I think I told you
Yeah.
I wrote down in my journal, it says a word to describe myself, and I wrote brave, and another word was delightful, and one was easy to love, which touches on my fear of not being lovable.
Hmm.
And I wrote those
Wow.
down and I wrote, as stated by my confessional community, and I choose to believe them. I may not always act that way. I may not
Yeah.
always act brave and lovable and delightful, but that's what you guys saw in me. After knowing some deep, dark, yucky stuff,
Yeah.
you still chose to
Yeah.
use those words to describe me. I'm gonna borrow those and have compassion. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
have compassion for myself.
It strikes me as you're saying that my confessional community said this about me. I may not always act like this. I'm thinking for myself how I need to hear those words again and again and again. Like, okay, you said this. I still can't believe you. Will you say it again? Okay, I want to believe you. Will you say it again? Will you tell me again?
Yeah.
And that's what we do. We practice, right? We practice
Mhm.
honestly saying, I want to believe you, but I can't. I'm struggling right now. Will you say it again? We tell the truth about our experience, about our story, about our active,
Mm.
live, real, in the moment experience, which that has changed how I show up in my relationships. Like it's
Mm.
made me braver to tell the truth in other relationships, which as I say that, I'm like, oh gosh, have I not been telling the truth my whole life? No, I actually haven't. which is a little bit like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to admit that because I only
Everyone does
tell.
it though.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
But the
not the
truth
only
is,
one.
I have practice, right? Like you said, in order to manage that shame and that fear of rejection, which we all do, I've managed the parts of myself that I share. I've
Right.
limited the parts of the truth that I will tell based on how I anticipate others will respond. And I
Right.
mean, I think this is the work in marriage. Like Corey and I have been working so hard because we know how to make each other happy and make things easy and comfortable. And it is hard to tell the truth when it could
Mm.
upset or hurt or make the other person uncomfortable, right? And I think that in friendship, like I've practiced in places that I'm leading groups of women or with my kids, like to be honest about what's happening for me emotionally in the moment. And that's not always appropriate. Like we have to have wisdom and discernment. Like we can't always say, all the whole thing to all the people. Like that is a practice too. But it is helping me to be braver and more honest in other spaces, which I will tell you what it's doing is it's creating stronger connections. Like
Mhm.
I feel safer in my relationships because I'm allowed to show up authentically and fully. And I'm allowed to be a human in leadership because I don't have to have all the answers. I can be
Mhm.
honest about my struggle or my mistakes. And it's changing the way I just walk through the world with honestly greater security and groundedness because I'm allowed to tell the truth and I know I will still be loved because we've
Mhm.
practiced that together. Have you seen that outside of our group too? Like, how's it impacted your relationships outside of our
Yeah.
confessional community?
Yeah, I definitely can relate to being more truthful. Not that I was trying not to be truthful or trying to hide, but like you said, you sort of manage what you
Yeah.
share and you
Yeah.
might leave out some of the, details that would not put you in a good light, but just being more honest with my spouse. And here's one, doing it and not being received well with a spouse or a friend, but still being okay because
Yeah.
I have been received well, because I have been cared for, and because I'm learning to care for myself and borrowing how you see me, borrowing the compassion that you offer me. Oh, and by the way, Jesus is offering that same compassion to me. And if am I receiving that from him and from you guys? Then when I'm not received well, sure, it hurts. Sure, I long to be received well by a spouse or a friend or my children. But when it doesn't happen, it just doesn't feel as devastating.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you mentioned this must be how Jesus receives me. This must be the compassion that Jesus offers me. Because, a lot of people, especially in faith communities, again, we often separate our emotional lives from our spiritual lives as if they
Mm,
are compartmentalized or different. And you and I both know that's actually not how God made us, that He intended us to be integrated and whole, heart, mind, body, soul, all parts of our body and our minds integrated. That's how we
integrated.
flourish. Yes. And again, Kurt Thompson talks about how what Christians call this work of sanctification, becoming whole, is in the language of interpersonal neurobiology called integration. So it's the same thing. And
Mm,
that's what we're trying to do is bring all of our parts together. And so as you talk about experiencing compassion through others and how that helps you imagine and receive the compassion and kindness of Christ toward you, I think that's so important to highlight is that's what's been transformative for me is, oh,
mm.
God's love for me is no longer just an idea. Like I'm receiving it through his body
Yes,
embodied
yeah.
in these humans. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you were talking about earlier, you said, tell me again that I am brave. Tell me again that it's almost like a little kid coming up and saying, Mom, tell me again I'm beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And it just reminded me of a prayer that I often fall back to. Father, would you just remind me again how much you love me? Would you just, I'm forgot. I forgot today, or I've forgotten over the last couple of hours. Could you just remind me again how much you delight in me? Because I know you do. I trust you, but I've forgotten. I just need that reminder, right?
What a beautiful prayer. That just gave me goosebumps head to toe. To hear the intimacy and honesty with which you're able to bring yourself and your need to God. And I know, like, truly, I have goosebumps on my scalp right now because I know that's his heart and his delight to hear that truth and to answer that prayer. He never gets tired of it. Just like I never get tired of telling my kids, yes, I love you. Yes, I love you. Yes, I love you. And also because you've practiced telling the truth with people you trust, you can do that. in freedom.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to say too, like the more you put into, say you do join a confessional community, the more vulnerable you choose to be, the more potential for beauty. And I would say that's a direct translation to it. The more vulnerable you choose to be with the Lord,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
totally.
the more beauty there is to receive, right? Because if we're managing how we show up with God
Yeah.
too,
Which I
not that
did.
he's going to withhold. Yeah, not that
Right.
he's going to withhold, but I'm withholding.
Mhm.
And I think that affects
Right.
my receiving.
Totally, because I've believed that if I can perform and do the right things for him on the outside, then that's going to affect my acceptability, like his acceptance and pleasure with me. Like it's based on my performance. And so again, we're breaking that through our lived experience with one another. It makes me think I have a couple things as we're getting to the end here. Oh, if people are interested in joining confessional communities, as this airs, signups are actually now open through the Center for Being Known. So if I'll link the website, but if you go to thecbk.org, there's actually, you can click on confessional communities and there's a place that you can join. You can sign up to join. And there's all sorts of different time opportunities for people. And the only cost is just a CBK membership, which is $50 a year. And so I just want to encourage people that if this is stirring even a small bit of desire, if you're terrified, that's normal and it's okay. But if there's even a little bit of desire, like take a risk. Take a risk
Mm,
and you might be surprised. Actually, and I just want to normalize too, like all of us struggled. Like it wasn't easy for any of us to show up authentically,
right.
right? We had to fight for this together, but we were doing it together.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I want to talk about rupture and repair, and we're at the end, so I know we don't have a ton of time. But is there anything you want to say about the way rupture and repair might happen in a confessional community and kind of how that builds us in our other relationships?
Well, I really liked your question about um, people who say, well, it's in the past. Like,
Mm,
why would you go
hmm.
there?
Yeah, what would you
So,
say to those people?
yeah. So, well, I'm going to quote Shakespeare
I love
from
it.
The Tempest, which I was in. Yes. Fun fact.
Theater kid, love that.
Yeah, theater geek over here. The past is prologue, right? And what that means is that the past really sets the stage for what is about to happen. There is no getting away from that. There's no, oh, it's in the past, so we're gonna be completely different from it now, unless, you know, without processing it, without and I don't want to get too psychological here because I'm not a professional, but I just the past really does condition our present and our future. So to go there with a group of people who are lovingly gazing on your story, who are accepting it, it really does have the potential to change your future.
Yeah, that's so beautiful and true. I love that picture of the past as a prologue. And it's not just for people who are weak and haven't just gotten over it and moved on, it's for all of
Right.
us. Brain
Right.
science shows that, like, our brains are formed by our stories. And so
Yeah.
I love your acknowledgement that we are shaped how we respond today, how we show up today, how we experience life, abundant life or lack thereof today is shaped by our experiences up to this moment. So I'm glad you named that. Rachel, this has been such a delight, and you are a delight. I am so grateful for the way your life, your story, your presence has shaped mine and continues to do so. Um, I'm curious, as we wrap up here, is there a permission slip that you'd want to give to people listening?
Yes. Yes. I wrote this down.
Okay.
Practice, 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 right? I probably love horribly more than I love well,
Oh,
but I keep practicing, right?
yeah.
I keep
Yeah.
practicing receiving love, offering love, forgiving myself, forgiving others. And you know that feels very much like the abundant life, going back to that Jesus
Hmm.
talked about, being
Yeah.
my authentic self, showing up fully, offering myself fully, receiving love, giving love, receiving love from the Father, receiving love from you and my friends, you know, my
Mm.
family,
Yeah.
offering that feels like practicing for heaven. That feels like the abundant life, but it is practice. It's practice. It's getting it wrong more than you get it right and
Yeah.
just doing it over and over and over until we're face to face with Jesus.
Yes. Yes. And I'm so glad you said that. We're going to get it wrong sometimes. We didn't have time to even go into this whole idea of rupture and repair. and that reality of relationships, including a confessional community, but any
Yeah.
relationship we're in, we are going to have ruptures of connection where we hurt someone unintentionally or they hurt us or we misunderstand. That is part of being human. We cannot work hard enough to avoid that. It's going to happen. And so what happens when it does? We keep practicing. And that's the
Yes.
beauty of a confessional community and other spaces where we can practice repairing the ruptures and knowing that we're okay and we're loved, even in our imperfect love for others. So thank you, Rachel. This has been a gift. Thanks for listening to this episode of Permission Slips. I hope this conversation will invite you to consider where you might be able to practice vulnerability, sharing your story, and allowing yourself to be more fully known. And if you want to join a confessional community, again, check out the link to thecbk.org. Remember, your life matters, and so does your story, more than you know.